And we're live, this time for real. You had a few minutes of silence for all those that have been treated and released. And it's time for the Dugout. Happy Sunday afternoon, everybody. And we show proved to be clinically effective with 73% in a random double-blind trial. It's been 31 days since our last no-hitter, and there are currently 291 players on the injured reserve list. The Cubs' trades were so awful, their records is currently meaningless. The A's center fielder Ramon Laureano has been sent to 80 games for PEDs. Combine that with Hector Santiago getting caught with sticky substances, we can all breathe a sigh of relief. The Major League Baseball has solved these two problems. If you, if you build it, they will come. Field of Dream Games happens this Friday with the White Sox facing the Yankees. USA Olympic team lost the gold medal game to host Japan, taking home her first ever silver medal. Marlins prospect Eddie Alvarez became the third American to medal in both the Winter and Summer Olympic Games. Today in football, America's favorite sexual predator, Peyton Manning, will be getting his Hall of Fame induction. And it's still time to celebrate Sneak Some Zucchini in Your Neighbor's Porch Day, which comes around every 8th of August and is one of the better holidays out there. Let's all celebrate with some ratatouille. And you are in the dugout with me, Doug Boyle, as we do talking baseball every Sunday afternoon. Oh, first, order of business. We always talk about a few things first. I did want to mention about USA Baseball. I was following it fairly closely. It was by far my most favorite thing about the Olympics. I did watch basketball. I do, as I always do, I watch boxing. But there are a couple interesting things on there. One, there were at least two players I thought, well, one, Tristan Casas, the Boston Red Sox prospect first baseman, has got a whole lot of power, and he looked pretty good. He didn't look fantastic good, but he looked pretty good. But the interesting about him is that even with all that power, when he bats, he chokes up a la Anthony Rizzo. And I imagine the Rizzo might have got that from the Red Sox at one point in time before he was moved to the Padres. So it means that the guy's at least thinking about controlling the strike zone. So even though he kind of looks like he might be one of those a lot of home runs, a lot of strikeout guys, he might be a little bit better than that, as Anthony Rizzo always has been, though not with the power that Casas has. And the other player that really did look good sitting out is converted outfielder Anthony Goes, who he pitched the perfect Olympics, got everybody out. In many games, he pitched more than one inning. He was able to get out righties, able to get out lefties. He hits 95, 96 on his fastball. And he's a left-hander. I don't know how this guy isn't going to be on a roster somewhere. But those are the two guys I think that'll be coming in there real quick. In the old show, we used to do a bit called just a little bit outside. We talked a little about football. I made a little football reference before, but I do want to take a minute to recognize the passing of Florida State coach Bobby Bowden, who I met one time, and he was a really good guy. The best friend of one of my relatives was an ex-FSU football player, and as that particular ex-football player, who wasn't a star by any imagination, was dying, at age 26 or whatever it was, of AIDS. Bowden came down and talked to everybody, and the fact that he remembered, a fairly little guy. I'm not going to say his position or what his name is because that little secret about AIDS is not something that everyone knows. But it points out something about Bowden's his feeling as coach, as part of it being family, but also his Christianity was much more open. And we're talking 25 years ago. And yes, I do have to say this: I've been sick, and it's probably what you think it is. So if I step away for a few minutes somewhere in there, if I leave this thing on, it means I'm coming back. If I turn it off, I'm not. It also means that I wasn't quite as detailed in my working as I have been in the past. There's a lot of detail here because if I have one problem, it's too much detail. But there have been times when I just had to stop reading and writing because I was tired. And with that, let's get started. We had some returnees. Sal Perez and Robbie Grossman both returned to baseball Saturday, not going on the injured list, but coming back from minor ailments. Perez had some kind of illness. From the IL this week, we welcomed back Colin McHugh, Mike Moustakas, Colin Moran, Brandon Belt, Rob Refschneider, Pavin Smith, Matt Barnes, Jazz Chisholm, Corey Dickerson, Jake Fraley, Richie Martin, Kristen Yelich, and a host of others, but those are the key ones. Out this week, I just heard the news on Twitter that Anthony Rizzo Formerly of the Cubs, now of the Yankees, is out with COVID. He was famously one of the Cubs to not be vaccinated, be at least a little bit outspoken about it. And so I hope for the best. No one wants him to be sick. He's always a favorite of the Cubs, still a favorite of mine. One bad decision does not a career make. Bobby Bradley sat out Saturday after he exited Friday with a knee issue of Cleveland. J.P. Crawford sat out on Saturday with an illness, likely out today too. Juan Soto missed both Friday and Saturday. He said he felt something in his knees while he was scoring a run on Thursday. They don't think it's anything too serious, but he's still not playing just yet. Brian Mountcastle sat out Saturday after coming out of the game on Friday, apparently getting some kind of concussion while trying to steal second base. Rhys Hoskins has missed Friday and Saturday because of the recurring groin soreness. Didi Gregorius is set on because of elbow soreness. I heard them say it was a very rare condition called pseudo-gout, which I've never heard of before, but hey, pseudo-gout is pseudo-gout, right? Tyler Stevenson, catcher of the Reds, he missed Friday and Saturday. He left Thursday with a hamstring cramp. The tests have come back and said that it's not serious. Andrew Benintendi has missed Wednesday through Saturday after he left the game on Tuesday with a left shoulder strain. I wouldn't be surprised if a DL stint comes there. And Luis Arias exited the game on Saturday with a knee issue. To the actual IL, we lost Aroldis Chapman, the closer in New York, with left elbow inflammation. Jason Hayward of the Cubs with left index finger inflammation. Yuli Gurriel went to the IL with neck symptoms for Houston. Ben Gamel, who's been a nice surprise for Pittsburgh, is out with a right hamstring strain. Cleveland catcher Roberto Perez is out with the right shoulder inflammation. Texas outfield Eli White with a right elbow strain. San Francisco's pitcher Anthony DeSclafani with right shoulder fatigue. Toronto third baseman Kevin Biggio with mild back tightness. New York Yankees third baseman Gio Urshela with left hamstring strain. Newly acquired relief pitcher John Axford of Milwaukee left with the right elbow problem. Philadelphia's outfielder Andrew McCutcheon left at the beginning of the week with left knee inflammation. They said it should be nothing serious. They think it's going to be a minimum stay. Then you have the list of people that, along with Anthony Rizzo, we lost this week to COVID, which include closer Josh Hader of Milwaukee, Jurickson Postfire of San Diego. We actually don't know that that's COVID, but no reason given. That's normally COVID. But the other ones are all straight out. Randy Arozarena, the Rays, Jarren Duran of the Red Sox, JD Martinez of the Red Sox. Apparently, he's actually stranded in Canada because of it. Milwaukee's non-hitter, Keston Hiura, the Yankees starting pitcher Garrett Cole, and their catcher Gary Sanchez. There is something, as I said, I've been feeling something. It seems like in Florida here, it's 80% humidity, 2% COVID in the atmosphere, and it's coming down left and right and left and right. Baseball is no different. I am grateful that I was immunized because what I have now just feels like a bad flu. Actually, it feels like a mild flu, to be more accurate. I just have one particular ailment that makes it bad. This week, Anthony Rendon is done for the year. He's put on a 60-day along with Jimmy Nelson and Willie Calhoun. Calhoun can still make it back, but it's highly unlikely. He's going to make it back based on the number of days with the retro thing. We got some guys in rehab that are new on rehab stints that are interesting to look at. Atlanta's bench puncher Huascar Ynoa is off in AAA Gwinnett. Arizona infielder Josh Rojas is over in Reno. Jack Flaherty, we've been waiting for a while. One of the star pitchers of St. Louis is off to Springfield. Miami's got Eliezer Hernandez pitching quite well in Jacksonville with the Jumbo Shrimp. San Francisco third baseman Evan Longoria is on rehab with Sacramento. The Atlanta's pitcher Ian Anderson is off in Gwinnett. Dinelson Lamet of the Padres is at Lake Elsinore. Luis Severino is moved up to Double-A Somerset. You'll see that they can only spend 30 days in rehab, and they can't spend it all at one level. So you see guys that have a longer track go from A-League or Complex League to Double-A to Triple-A before they come back. So That still puts him on pace for a late August, maybe December 1st call up. Miles Michaelis of St. Louis joining Flaherty in Springfield. Alberto Mondesi has been playing a few days in Omaha. He has not been playing that well, but at least he's playing. Detroit second baseman Isaac Paredes. He's a AAA Toledo. When I wrote that, it mattered more than that, but now it looks like they've signed Jonathan. The Detroit Tigers have signed Jonathan Scoop to a 2-year deal, which is good for him, but it means that Paredes is going to have to beat out Heimer Candelaria to get playing time next year. And in Cincinnati, you have both TJ Antone and Lucas Sims on rehab assignment. Some big name call-ups this week. The first and foremost was former top prospect Joe Adell. He's been playing okay with the LA Angels. Nothing to write home about just yet, but not bad enough to be a worrisome just as of yet. I am, to be completely honest, I am starting him in a couple of leagues. They are deeper type leagues. Maybe starting pitcher that they acquired from Oakland, Jesus Luzardo. They called him up. He pitched. Cleveland signed and called up Wilson Ramos, who had a great start of this year 2 teams ago. Boston recalled Tanner Houck, and he'll be pitching on Thursday as part of a doubleheader. Cleveland recalled one of Lenny's favorite guys, Andres Jimenez, from minors. He hasn't been playing that well in the minors, but I do see that this call up is they're going to probably turn that second position over to him from Owen Miller. Pittsburgh recalled Anthony Alford, had a great first night last night. If you look at the box scores, Anthony Alford is one of those guys that I always seem to fall in love with when I'm drafting prospects. He's got all the athleticism in the world, just haven't really put it together yet. It's the same things that I said about Jazz Chisholm, Akil Baddoo, Lewis Brinson. I'm not always right, but I like the guys that have all the tools. Daniel Johnson. And the other guy is Brendan Davis. I'll throw his name out from the Cubs, but these guys haven't come up yet. And the Dodgers called up Kevin Quackenbush, and it's unimportant of the fact that I'd like to say the word Quackenbush. When I used to play DFS, and I played a lot, played over $100,000 worth of money in 1 year. My screen name was Dr. Quackenbush from A Day at the Races, Groucho Marx. Go check that one out. DFA this week, Arizona DFA JP Buskauskas, so he's not going to be the closer. Baltimore DFA'd. They sent down Patty Barrels, Pat Faleka. Cleveland sent down Daniel Johnson. Pittsburgh sent down Phillip Evans. San Francisco Giants sent down Steven Duggar, and Minnesota sent down friend of the show, Nick Gordon, G5, as we like to refer to him as. They said that he needs to still do some development. What they've seen from him this year, they've actually really liked. It's just he's young and he hasn't played that much, and it's better for him to play in the minors than to back upstairs in the majors. A couple of trades this week, even though trades are supposed to be not allowed. Milwaukee acquired relief pitcher John Exford from Toronto for cash, and also the Boston Red Sox acquired ex-Texas outfielder, I guess, Delano DeShields, also for cash. A few other things of note that aren't in the normal things that this week Texas released David Dahl and Arizona released Josh Reddick. People before the season were really talking up Dahl. I was a big fan of Dahl in Colorado, but once he left Colorado, I mean, and then in Colorado you could apologize for the injuries a little bit, because when he was playing, he was either so good or there was potential to be so good, and all. But in Texas, he was an afterthought for most leagues this year. And signings this year, the big signing was, for some reason, the LA Dodgers signed Cole Hamels. And he was sent immediately to the ACL Dodgers. I know they're desperate for spots. When I was looking at the probables for next week, there's a game on Thursday that has nobody assigned to it. Maybe Hamels is ready in 5 days, highly unlikely, but probably going to be a Mitchell White call-up for some kind of quasi-bullpen game. Cincinnati signed Atlanta outfielder Ender Arciardi because they really want to have a lot of outfielders, and many of them not very good. Baltimore claimed exciting, yet to do anything really in the majors, outfielder Jorge Mateo off of the Padres. This guy can run. He might be able to hit someday. Boston signed former Dodgers prospect Jose Leone to a minor league deal. The Giants, who are great at recovering people, they have signed Tyler Chatwood to a minor league deal. I don't know whether it's him to start or him to finish, but Chatwood, if you look at his numbers when he's with Colorado, he really loved playing in San Francisco. And Oakland re-signed Chris Davis with a K to a minor league deal. I think it's a bit of a legacy move, giving him the shot to prove himself somewhere to the one place where he's probably done the most for. And I just like that sort of thing. Chat room's a little quiet today. People are getting used to the 9 o'clock show, so maybe I have to move to another time. I'm showing 5. I can live with 5. I do this mostly for the people on the podcast side, because we do talk 90% about FAAB pickups for the week, and that's what we're about to get started with. I think it's a little bit different. Is we moved to focus on pitching. We moved starting pitching to the front of the game, and we're still going to start with starting pitching. But before we go anywhere else, we're going to go to relief pitching first, because some of the most requests that I've had have been they've said either they like my closer report or they want to hear about closers. So I'm going to move them up. So it's going to go starting pitcher, closers, then outfield, and the batters, and then we'll say sayonara. So this week, I never have a lot of notes on the pitching. It's the big thing in pitching this week has been is the return of pitchers. We got Chris Sale returning next week. I thought he was going to return on Tuesday. I saw on Twitter they're saying his first game is going to be next Saturday, so maybe he's going to get one more game in the minors. Jack Flaherty is going to return for the St. Louis on Tuesday. James Kaprielian, who was only put on the IL about 10 days ago, is going to return on Thursday. Huascar Ynoa is going to return the following week on Miami, and Elias Hernandez is going to return later in that week if everything goes the way it's planned as of right now. With any injury, there's always a possibility of that sort of stuff. So we get to the recommendations, and we talked about 2 styles recommendations. We talked about the recommendations for shallower leagues like Yahoo, and we talk about deeper leagues like NFBC. So there are guys that are in the middle that are pretty. We talked about it all, because you have to be pretty good to merit being in a 12-team league, being a starter or a player in a 12-team league, and in a deep league, we're talking about the edges of the world. Some players out there, so there are some guys worth looking at. Cal Quantrill was talked about at length at this morning show, so I'm not going to go over that. He's 34% owned in Yahoo. Madison Bumgarner is 41% owned. He's actually over his last 25 innings, the last 30 days, he's got a 0.8. He's got a 1.8 WHIP at a 0.8. Sorry, 1.8 ERA and a 1.0 WHIP. Strikeouts are down. He's got 15 and 25 innings, but it's been some solid starting. I don't know if that's Yahoo label, but because of the name, he's somebody to watch. Logan Webb of San Francisco is 46% owned. He's right at about a strikeout inning with 28 strikeouts in 30 innings over the last 30 days, a 2.10 ERA. He's in a good team that should get him wins, even though it hasn't really been working out that way for him. But he's a guy that I like. Daniel Lynch, I know he's got like still his ERA for the year is still in the high 5s, but he pitched 2 very good games, and then he has 2 games back to back versus teams that are really going to test his mettle. He passed the first test, not with flying colors, but when he played New York this week, he pitched pretty good. He's playing Boston next week on Tuesday, but I believe that if he pitches as well as he pitched versus the Yankees or better, this might be the last week he can make a move on him in any kind of FAAB league, because right now he's protected by having that really ugly, and there's no reason why this guy can't be as good as Alek Manoah or Logan Gilbert in that range, even though he's a rookie. He seems to have figured something out in the last month of games. In that period of time, he's 2-0 with 13. Over the last month, he's got 2.38 ERA, 13 Ks, and 19 innings, which isn't the best strikeout. His strikeout rate was a bit better. Johnny Cueto is 40% rostered. I don't really think I need to talk to him, but he actually is, even for San Francisco, has a 2.60 ERA with more than a K per inning over the last month. Kyle Mulder, the lefty in the Braves situation, I think he's going to get more and more playing time. He's about a strikeout per inning. He's running a 2.41 ERA in the last 4 starts. Rich Hill of the Mets, his ERA is up a bit. When he came over to the Mets, his first 2 starts were bad, but his last start, He allowed no runs. He's in that grouping. And David Price, we always like. And if the Dodgers will let him pitch, he's getting to that point. He pitched 5.2 innings last inning, where he's going to be let go because they let go in the rotation, and he's going to be something you're going to like. 37% rostered. Also, the two returning guys, Eliezer Hernandez and Wasker Yanoa, you should pay some attention to. In the deeper leagues, Cal Quantrill, who, like I said, we mentioned before, he is 56 round. He's outside the parameters of what we're talking about, but close enough that he might be available. You have Daniel Lynch, Wasker Yanoa, Eliezer, that we talked about. There's a few other guys that have shown you time. They're not necessarily recommendations, but they're guys that have to look at based on what they're doing. I like what Chris Bubich has been doing in Kansas City. Jamie Barria with the Angels. They're a little bit matchup driven. Braxton Garrett has pitched that one game. He's going to come back and pitch this week. He's somebody to look at. I want to keep an eye on Jay Happ with St. Louis. I think that when he started his game with St. Louis, he had the worst ERA out of any qualified pitcher, and I think he's better than that. But it's still yet to be seen. Aaron Sanchez came back and pitched, a 7-inning, 1-run outing, but he actually is not marked to pitch again as a starter. So I'd watch out that. There's a big question about Matt Harvey. We recommended Matt Harvey 2 weeks ago. We told you to walk off of him last week with the tough game versus New York. Yeah, but you still got to look at it. It's one bad game versus a bad team. It's 29 strikeouts in 36 innings pitched, sub-1 whip, sub-1 ERA over the course of the month. This week, he's a mixed bag. He's not going to be on our scrub listing recommendations because he's got it. We don't really do guys that have 2 games unless both games qualify under our strict rules as to who are the teams we want to face off against. His first game is home versus Detroit, and that should be pretty decent for him. But then he's got the game at Boston, which will balance that thing out. But if you get through that, I think Harvey is definitely a matchup level guy that you can come in. Then we have Daniel Lynch, and he's one of my recommendations on this deeper side. I'm playing a little bit of a game with this. I'm only going to be recommending Daniel Lynch, Wasker Yanoa, Eliezer Hernandez, and the other guy is Vladimir Gutierrez. I didn't really get into detail on the thing, but Gutierrez is a guy that can strike out pitchers playing on a good team. I think it's a team that might make a run at winning the NL Central because I've been saying pretty much every week that I don't believe that Milwaukee Brewers are any good of a team. The Cincinnati Reds haven't been playing like a good team, but they could be a good team if they do their things right. There's also a few other names in there. Eric Fetty at 10%, Paulo Espino at 10%, Nestor Cortes at 7%, Bradley Ober at 20%. I marked those there because they're going to be part of my scrub pitching tracking. And so we always make a recommendation, as we found out that it seems to me that it's more important that it's who you're facing versus who you have going for you. And so we put down the rules that we're going to look for matchups. We had 4 tiers of teams. Arizona, wherever they're at, but at away it's gold. Seattle, anywhere they're at, but at home they're more gold. Texas, Miami, Pittsburgh are the 5 teams in Tier 1. Tier 2 is a little bit more particular. It's Detroit versus lefties or at home. At Kansas City, it's not at home versus righties. Rest of season versus righties, I'll get right to that. Cleveland at home. Colorado away, Baltimore away. Atlanta versus lefties. So I'm thinking about pulling Atlanta from this thing because their revamped outfield is something that's a little bit more dangerous, and we're going to need a little more data before I can say that they're actually a bad hitting team. Milwaukee versus lefties, St. Louis versus anybody, but especially versus left-handers. Tampa Bay Rays when they're at home. I'm actually scared to do that when I really do that. Chicago when they're away. Chicago is so bad that Chicago away is going to jump in the Tier 2, but their home games, they would be on this list too, except for the fact that if there's a day when the wind's blowing out, you could screw any pitchers or things whatsoever. And then Cincinnati versus lefties. Washington Nationals are likely on this list now, and they're in Tier 3. Atlanta's likely out with a revamp photo. So we got a question from William E. Show, and it says, Ross McClanahan or Gibson rest of season? I'm going to assume that it's Kyle Gibson now of the Phillies, and McClanahan, of course, has got to be the guy from Tampa Bay. But I know there's more than one Gibson. I'm just not remembering who they are. I think that what Cal Gibson has done this year is legitimate, and I think he's going to play more games, and I think the Phillies are going to be a real contender. Ross McClanahan, the problem with him, I think that he's by far the more talented pitcher, but it's also his first year. They also do things to mess with how many innings he goes. There's going to be games where he pitches well, but doesn't pitch long enough to qualify for the win. I would take Gibson over McClanahan for this year, rest of the season, based on what he's done. What he has done, if you haven't heard, we talked about it before, is that he changed the way that he threw his fastball, and his fastball actually is worse than it has been in the past. But the different spin grip has somehow made the other pitchers all look better. All the pitches look better. The other pitches. So secondary offerings have improved greatly this year, and that's legitimate. I think that he would have been in the Cy Young talk in the American League had he stayed with Texas. Not that he should have deserved or whatever, and not that he's not, not that he's going to finish with a 2.8 ERA, but if he's going to finish like a 2.77 ERA, I believe in what Kyle Gibson is doing. Back to that. So you get to this. They're trying to predict who's pitching who when teams were revamping their pitching orders based on players they acquired. So we recommended 4 pitchers, and unfortunately 2 of them, Jordan Lyles and John Lester, got moved into a 2-pitch situation and would not have been recommended had we had that right. So we're pulling those guys out. The two pitchers we recommended were, get this, Kobe Allard and Wade LeBlanc. And how did we fare? We're going to go through this video. How do we fare? How do you think we'd fare, Wade LeBlanc and Kobe Allard? Well, we got 2 quality starts last week. Nothing too special. No wins. A flat 3 ERA combined into 12 innings pitched between them, 4 Ks, 3 for 1 for the other, and a 1 flat whip. These guys cost you nothing, and that's what you got last week. So for the season, we've been doing this now 4 weeks. We've got 75 innings pitched. All guys that you can pick up for $1, 60 Ks, 3 wins, a 3.48 ERA, a 3.46 ERA, and a 1.17 WHIP. So under the terms of that list, Arizona, Seattle, Detroit, Texas, Miami, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cleveland, Mets, Colorado away, with all the parameters, these are the choices we had to pick from this week. And one that I'm kind of sneaking in there because I think it's a guy you might not have even heard of. All right, you have Matt Harvey versus Detroit. You got Nick Pivetta at Baltimore. Sorry, at home versus Baltimore. Tanner Huck, home versus Baltimore. Nestor Cortes of the Yankees, who's a lefty at Kansas City. Tyler Anderson, who's a lefty for Detroit, at Cleveland. Wiley Peralta versus Cleveland. Eric Fetty at the New York Mets. John Lester is a lefty at Kansas City. J.A. Happ, a lefty at Pittsburgh. And the last name in there, well, we'll save it for later. Of these guys, Matt Harvey, when Detroit's at home, they actually play a little bit better than you think, and things have been going better for them over the last month. So I'm pulling Harvey out of that, though. Harvey is a guy that I would actually pay attention to. Nick Pivetta, I'm going to take a pass on because I have 2 choices versus Baltimore, and I'm going to go with Tanner Huck because he's a good pitcher. Tanner Huck versus Baltimore should be fine in the Red Sox thing. They are playing in Fenway. They'll probably we're not looking at a shutout here, but looking at a win possibility with some decent strikeout totals. The next guy I'm picking, because Kansas City does not do well versus lefties, they're going to be at home versus Nestor Cortes and the Yankees, who's a lefty. Cortes can strike out a lot of guys. The only worry here is, of course, will he pitch deep enough? But I still think you're going to have a pretty good outing there. And the other guy I'm going to recommend 2 more, actually. Wiley Peralta is kind of the fan, is my guy I've been going with a number of weeks in this thing. He's going up versus Cleveland, and Cleveland's just not a good team hitting-wise. And I'll also take a shot, though. He's my 4th guy, is Eric Fetty versus the Mets in there. The last name I want to talk about, he's a 2-start guy. And like I said, we would normally not talk about any kind of 2-start guys based on these crappy pitchers, except for if they have 2 good matchups. And this guy gets to start the beginning of the season, the beginning of the week, pitching for San Diego against Miami. And at the end of the week, he gets to be at Arizona. And those are both very good matchups. The guy's name is Reese Kinnear. Now, he is a guy that they just moved into the bullpen, moved from the bullpen into the starting rotation out of desperation. He probably will not pitch more than 3 innings in either of these games. But throw out the fact that you're not going to get the win here. If you get 2 3-inning games from this guy, it's like 1 6-inning game from Kobe Allard. And in that case, it could be useful there. But I'm going to stick with the guys that I'm talking about are going to be Tanner Huck, Nestor Cortes, Wiley Peralta, with Eric Fetty as the alternate. I have to mark down these teams stream against. Good stuff. All right. Got another positive comment. We always like those. So with that, then we're going to go to our closers. Like so, we start with the closer report, which we're going to cover every team in brief. But you'll know exactly where everyone stands as of this morning. We're at the 30-minute mark. This is one of the longest parts, so when we're done with this, we'll be flying through this thing like you wouldn't believe. The first thing we look at is the two teams that have injury fill-ins. In Milwaukee, you have Hader out, and with the Yankees, you have Araldis out. Jonathan Ligas converted the save on Saturday versus Seattle on 8 pitches. Chad Green and Zach Britton are thought to be part of the thing, but I think that Loaizaga is good enough and he did so well in that game that they're going to give him the ball until Araldis returns. The word is that Araldis' injury is not too serious. That being said, it might be more than 10, but I doubt it'll be more than 15 days. With Hader out, Devin Williams steps up with conversion as expected on Wednesday after they went with box burner on Monday. Brent Suter blew a save last night, so they actually, based on what you're looking at, that looks like they're playing out as a committee. I think that the guy you really want in there is Devin Williams. I have a little bit of a speculative thought about Boxberger, only because when Milwaukee, when Hader first came up, was a contending team, and they're a contending team this year. I don't believe they're that good. They were best when Hader was their setup guy. I don't know how they moved that into that, but in those days they had Corey Nebel to close out the games. I think that the Milwaukee Brewers would be their best possible team if Devin Williams pitched the 7th, Hader pitched the 8th, and someone else closed, and Boxberger could be that guy. I don't believe they're going to do that. I don't know how they get around to do that, but it's something where that's their best possible thing in my mind, so I would keep a little bit of an eye on Boxberger. Then we'll talk about the 3 situations where the closers are a little bit questionable. The first one being Arizona. Tyler Clippard's been a newly anointed closer there, he converted a save, he blew one. The blown save was coming after, it was in one of those games where, strangely enough, Arizona was up 4-0, and Taylor Clark came in and allowed 3 runs without getting an out. So he came in the middle of inning with runners on base, which isn't the ideal situation to give him a pass on that. However, because he pitched 2 days in a row, the next day the guy who got the save was Scott Poppin, who's nobody that I've ever heard of. But Clippard is likely a closer, even though the Diamondbacks aren't. The Diamondbacks won't get that many closes, but the fact that they went with Poppin after 2 days means they aren't married to it yet. Clippard's got the ring, but they have not sealed the deal. There's a chance there. In Colorado, Daniel Bard converts 2 saves this week, and he was in Colorado, which is really unique for them. Maybe he's figuring something out. Maybe it's just on a lucky riff for him. It's still somebody, maybe he's turned a corner. It's still somebody that I'm still avoiding, but saves are saves. And that's the guy who's getting saves in Colorado. The new one in this thing is the New York Mets. There have been a couple pitchers, notably Will Smith and Edwin Diaz, who've been getting all the saves, but have been pitching in ways that I consider less than stellar and things that make you very, very nervous. And Edwin Diaz had 5 good outings in a row, but then he allowed 2 runs on Thursday, and he pitched the 8th inning that day rather than 9th. He's allowed runs in 6 of his 12 appearances since July. You take the fact that Edwin Diaz was pitching in the 8th inning on Thursday, and Trevor May converting a very traditional save the day before, they may be moving to Trevor May, and no one has noticed it yet. So Trevor May is definitely worth speculating on. Those are the questionable spots. Edwin Diaz, Tyler Clippard, Daniel Bard. I'm a yes to Clippard. I'm a what if you have Diaz, you have to keep him. And I'm a no on Daniel Bard. The guys that are safe. Will Smith of Atlanta, we talked about, despite blowing a save last night, he is the closer with 1 save Wednesday. Richard Rodriguez, who they acquired, has yet to pitch in anything that's important, has only pitched twice. In Boston, Mike Barnes missed the day with illness on Tuesday, came back with a save on Wednesday. Atlanta picked up save on Saturday and won the doubleheader. Barnes lost the first game, won the second game. Barnes is one of the elite non-closing pitchers to own this year, but Matt Barnes is still the closer. In Houston, Presley missed time early in the week, and when there was a save opportunity, they passed up on Kendall Graveman to go to Ryan Stanek. So he's probably the backup guy, but Presley is still the man there. With the Angels, Rosario Iglesias got 2 chances, converted both. He actually brought his ERA all the way down to 3 after being up over 4 for a good part of this year. In LA Dodgers, it's Kenley, 1 of 1 this week. Not much to say there. San Diego, Mark Melanson is the closer. Despite his blown save this week and 5 on the year, if your team has holds or whatever, Drew Pomeranz should be rostered. He'd be the guy I'd want if that should falter. There's a chance this games get to be more important, that the blown saves that Mark Melanson, even though he's leading the league in saves, might factor in some way. In St. Louis, Reyes is still the guy. Gallegos got a save last night after Reyes pitched 2 nights in a row. They are giving Reyes some level of rest, and that's one of the things they did, is they're not pitching 3 days in a row. In Seattle, Diego Castillo picked the save on Tuesday, but then he came in on the 8th on Friday and gave up the lead. Paul Sale pitched 8th the day before. That is definitely a committee. Why is this not in my committee grouping? All right, let's save that later. Seattle should be in the committee grouping. The pecking order is Castillo first, Sewald second writer third, but that is a committee. Unfortunately, I missed 2 things before that. Like I said, I wasn't feeling all that great this week, so my notes aren't perfect, and that I have 1 place out of order. Still with the guys that are safe. That's what the hell? Yeah, these are both. Well, Kyle Finnegan belongs here. Kyle Finnegan's the new closer in Washington, primarily because he's been generally fine at what he's done, and there's no real competition. He did have a really bad blown save this week, allowing no earned runs but 4 unearned runs due to a Carter Kieboom throwing error. I don't think you're going to hold it against them. Into the committees, remember what I said about Seattle. The pecking order is Castillo, Sewald, and Steckenrider. Texas, a lot of folks want to appoint Spencer Patton as a closer based on the fact that he got the 1. And with that 1 save that ties him for the active team league with 1, go ahead, pick up Patton. You got to realize it might not stick. It might not be worth it picking up. Joe Barlow and Josh Spores are still in consideration. I still think Josh Spores gets another chance before time goes out. But anybody that has the closer ball can run off 3-4 good games in a row and take command. And right now the ball's in Patton's hand. In Minnesota, with Robles gone and Taylor Rogers on the left, this team has sort of gone away from committee, though it is traditionally a Rogers and Colome committee. I had a conversation with Andrea, of this network, the lady and the legend. She's the lady, and I buy her explanation. Alex Colome is a guy that has pitched well enough when he's been the closer. Right now, he's the closer because of the injury, and he did have a bad first game, but the last 2 games he did get out of all right. He settled the last 2 saves pretty cleanly. There isn't much else going there based on just guys with experience or guys that you really trust. I like what Caleb Fieldbrow brings to the table, but he's not a closer. So I would say that this is traditionally a committee. I think when Rogers comes back, it goes back to being a committee. But while Rogers is out, Colome is the closer in Minnesota. In Chicago, they're a weird committee because Liam Hendricks was one of the safest guys out there until they traded for Craig Kimbrell. They had no save ops this week. On Thursday, Liam Hendricks got 4 outs to get the win after Kimbrell pitched the 8th and allowed a 3-run home run to Andrew Romney of the Cubs. It just kind of shows you, it gives you a little insight into what their pecking order is. I think they still think of Liam Hendricks as the closer, though I think they're going to try to find a way to give Kimbrell enough save chances to keep him relatively happy. In Cleveland, just as we were anointing James Karanchuk, their closer, both save ops this week went to Class A. I heard someone say that they switched on the month, and it seems like they've switched on the month again. They're both good pitchers, but you realize that their numbers are going to be a little bit lower because they're splitting the bill. It's one of the few places where you have a committee where I would not mind rostering either one of those. Admittedly, I don't have either because they're drafted higher than I was willing to pay. In Baltimore, I still believe Cole Sulzer is the guy you want, but as a committee, this week they've had no save chances. Cole Sulzer did take a loss this week, so did Paul Fry. Not a lot going on there. In San Francisco, Jake McGee converts the lone save opportunity. Rogers will still take about a third of the chances. It's a committee, but it is definitely a committee that favors Jake McGee. He's the first among equals. In Miami, Dylan Floro got the saves on Monday and Tuesday. Then Anthony Binder came in for the save on Thursday. It's between them. Anthony Bender needs somebody to stumble to get in that grouping. I think I like Floro better because I think Anthony Bender's stuff works better in more of a highlighted situation. In one league that I'm at, where they do count saves and holds, I actually picked up both of them, and both of them together is fairly nice. The truth of it being is that I had Floro for a while to be a holds guy, thinking he might inherit that role because it's something I said at the beginning of the season was, I don't know. Right now, Amy Garcia is the closer for the Marlins, but by the end of the year it'll be Dylan Floro, and I still stand by that. And it looks like I'm getting closer to being right on that one there. Where did I leave off here? In Tampa Bay, the last save they gave to was to Ryan Sheriff on Wednesday. Got through Seattle with 8 pitches. If you remember Ryan Sheriff in the preseason, he actually wrote a letter to Tampa Bay saying that he's done with baseball. He can't take it mentally. But he came back, and now he's in the mix, along with Colin McHugh, Whistler, Kittredge, Chargois. Right now, their best pitcher on the team is Kittredge. I don't really want any of those. I believe that when Nick Anderson returns, which is probably 6 or 7 days away, he was scheduled to go on a rehab stint last week, but there was a COVID problem at the place where he was supposed to play, so he never went, stayed with the team. I think that Nick Anderson is going to be the closer in there, or fulfill the Diego Castillo role of being the guy that closes half the time, whereas they mix and match a couple others in there. Toronto, they traded for Brad Hand. He allowed 4 runs in his first 2 save ops and kind of moved himself out of the mix. The interesting thing was, instead of going to, when they had the next save opportunity, and when they passed over Brad Hand, instead of going to Jordan Romano, they went with Adam Simber for the save on Thursday. Hand relieved Simber last night, so Hand wound up being behind Simber after the go-ahead run was scored in extras. Well, that was extras, so that is in there. So who knows what's going on there? Maybe that. Well, yeah, we have it in the committee. The committee is Romano, Hand, and we have to add Simber to the mix. I am in possession of Brad Hand in a couple of leagues, and that it makes me a little bit nervous. Luckily, it's in a league that I actually have more. I have a league where I have more than enough saves, one, and I can live with the fact that Hand is a part-time guy. In Detroit, both saves this week went to lefty Gregory Soto. Soto is always going to be getting shots in there. They're always going to try the other guys out too, Cisnero and Fulmer, effectively. Before the trading deadline, I was a big proponent of Michael Fulmer because my belief was the more he closed, the better chance they have of trading him for something that is worthwhile. Because people, but because he spent a lot of time injured, he never really built up the capital that he needed to pull a thing off. I think from here on out, he's not going to be the closer, and it's going to be between Cisnero and Soto. And it's going to be pretty close to 50-50. Maybe Fulmer sneaks in with one here and there, where it's probably one of those situations where he comes in the 8th and pitches so well they let him pitch the 9th. But I think Michael Fulmer is going to one day be back in there. Oh, sorry. I don't know if he'll ever make it, but I think Detroit wants Michael Fulmer to one day be back in their starting rotation. In Kansas City, they got one chance. Was it Scott Bowler or Craig Harlow? No. They went with a guy with a 9 ERA. Sorry, they went with Jake Brentz, the lefty, who used 4 pitches versus the White Sox. So that committee is doing everything the committee expects it to do. It's something, unless you're desperate for saves, you stay away from Kansas City bullpen. And in Chicago, they have the great question, who is Manuel Rodriguez? He's the guy with the 9 ERA who got the only save this week. He's a reach call from AAA. Cotahar is in the mix. Dan Winkler's going to be in the mix. And that's the order I'd probably want him in. I'm going Manuel Rodriguez first, Player second, Winkler third. And that's based solely on the fact that Rodriguez got the last save. That is not only possibly a steeping pile of garbage, but it's also the great unknown. We don't know much about any of those guys except for what we do know. With Dan Winkler has always pitched fairly well for the Cubs this year. He hasn't pitched that well throughout his career. So among the closers, who do we recommend? Well, anybody with a save is worth recommending. In Shell Yellies, Cal Finnegan has to be rostered. Alex Colonnay has to be rostered. Todd Clippard should be rostered. Dylan Floro and Bender, those are the next guys down. In the deep leagues, it's amazing how many guys that sniff at saves are in there. Clippard is 59% rostered, which is above the 50 threshold. But just bring him up because he's close. If he's available in your league, go make that move. You have Spencer Patton, who got the one save for Texas, 34. Jonathan Loizaga, the one save for New York, 17%. The guy I'm telling you to gamble on, Trevor May, is 15% rostered there. Deeper down the line, Adam Ottavino gets enough saves to be worthwhile. Manuel Rodriguez has 2% owned, and hey, he's a closer, sort of, for the Cubs. And then you have Lucas Sims of Cincinnati, who I believe when he gets back from this thing will be in the mix. When he was pitching, he had one bad outing. The rest of it, he was kept part of the committee. And I think Cincinnati will be a committee again, even though it looked for a minute like Keith Henry was going to take off with that stuff. So Adam Simber is 0% rostered. Cody Hoyer is 20% rostered. The other guy that I mentioned was Brad Boxberger, but that's mostly a wild-eyed dream of mine, and it probably won't come to be. Which brings us to the hitters, and we're at the 45-minute mark, which is about perfect. We try to get this thing done in about an hour, never go more than 15 minutes after, and we're right at that spot. I'll start talking a little bit faster. In the shallow leagues, there are some guys that are contributing that are worth picking up. I've been a big fan of Andrew Vaughn all year long. Odubel Herrera is playing. Oh, sorry, I'm starting in the wrong spot. Start with the news. The news here. We already went through the injuries. Joe Adell of the Angels is batting fifth in the order ahead of Brandon Marsh. In Houston, Kevin McCormick has started every game since Miles Straw has been traded away in center field. He's the guy there. In Oakland, the Laureano suspension looks like the guy that benefits the most is going to be Josh Harrison, even though he's not technically always going to play outfield. In Toronto, interestingly enough, the newly activated Corey Dickerson is supering Randall Graterik's playing time, which is a bit shocking because Graterik's played fairly well. Admittedly, by fairly well, I mean he's hit 260 with a decent number of home runs. Corey Dickerson is a guy who can hit 300 in a lineup that potent, having a guy that it might be more beneficial than have a guy that helps move the batting order around. So Dickerson's a guy to definitely look at in deeper leagues. In Atlanta outfielder, Adam Duvall is getting everyday playing time in Atlanta. He's batting fifth or sixth. In Chicago, Greg Deichmann replaced Jason Hayward. Not that we should care. Deichmann only in the deepest of leagues. He's got a pretty good track record of being decent on base-wise, but not much else besides that. Cody Bellinger hit a home run last night, but it looks like he's sitting versus most lefties. In San Francisco, Brandon Belt's return, at least in the short term, is not going to mean the demise of Lamont Wade. They're moving Lamont Wade to the outfield for most games. It did mean that Steven Dugard got DFA'd, as we talked about before, and it does mean that there's not a lot of space for Darren Ruff or Wilmer Flores, who I do like. Tommy Sell's back now, too. They've got more players than that thing, but as long as Wade's producing, his on base makes him a pretty good top-of-the-order guy, and their batting order of Wade Belt is a good 1-2 to start things off. I think Posey's batting third. But Lamont Wade is still going to play for them. In Miami, Brian De La Cruz has played right field every day since he's been acquired in trade. He is a rookie, and his production has been okay at best. Travis Jankowski and Odubel Herrera are both playing in the outfield with Bryce Harper. Odubel has moved to left field. Jankowski is playing center. Jankowski is not hitting that well. Neither is Herrera just yet, but they have it in them. Jankowski is a guy that can steal bases, so he's a guy to keep in your mind. One of the more interesting ones to me is that Pittsburgh outfielder they required from the Yankees, Hoy Park, has been basically the leadoff guy since Adam Frazier role. He's been playing the Adam Frazier spot since Adam Frazier's been gone, just been out from the outfield. And he's been hitting pretty close to 300, a couple home runs. He hasn't stolen any bases in the minors. In 200 plate appearances in the minors this year, he had like 8 home runs and 9 stolen bases, or might be 9 home runs and 8 stolen bases. He does track as a guy that can do both. And as bad as Pittsburgh is, the guy that's batting leadoff, much like Rafael Ortega in Chicago, can be real productive for you. In Colorado, it looks like Sam Hilliard is claiming center field with some good batting weeks. We've seen this play out. We've seen Sam Hilliard enough that I don't think this is going to – I think it's a hot streak at home more than a demonstration that he's taken the next step. He will still play, and I'll never tell you to not to ride the hot streak. Just be where you're riding one and be prepared to leave it. Andrew Benintendi missed Thursday through Saturday with a shoulder problem. I heard them talking during the broadcast that they thought it might be an IL stint. Robbie Grossman missed Friday because of a hit. He was hit by pitch to the elbow, but he did return last night. In Minnesota, Brent Rooker is still batting second, which really confounds me. I'm telling you that Rob Schneider's return will likely move him to the bench, and Schneider will be an important part of the Minnesota offense as average as it is, he'll be an important part of it. In the time he played prior to his injury, he looked like he was demonstrating some things that were new to him, some new skills. And uh, and when the Angels are facing the National League, their outfield is Marchandale and Upton, and Otani got 2 days off. That might actually be good for Otani. I don't actually leave a spot in my thing to talk about DHs because, well, we don't play with a DH in fantasy, and this is a fantasy waiver wire podcast. So I find to figure a way to say, hey, Otani took 2 days off, and that's the spot for us. In the shallow leagues, there's some good players here. There's some guys that I actually want. And I start with Brandon Belt, who've been touting all year long. He's 90% rostered. Rafael Ortega has been doing some pretty seriously good shit with good stuff with Chicago. That's the first time I've sworn on this show this year. That's because I'm sick. Lorenzo Cain, who, as I said before, is a guy that should have been picked just outside the top 100 in the draft. He's playing for Milwaukee, and they're playing better than you think. He's 20% rostered. Those are the three guys that I want the most in shallow leagues. There are a couple other guys. There's room in the world for. I've talked with Andrew Vaughn a lot, but I'd probably push him to first base. Josh Harrison, we talked about his playing time, is not bad. Ahmed Rosario is only 30% rostered, and if you're in a roto style league, those stolen bases are golden. And of course, Odubel Herrera is 5% rostered. In the deeper leagues, this is where the guys I find to be more interesting. I talked about Hoy Park. He hasn't hit any home runs or any steals. I think I said he had a home run, but he's hitting 381 at leadoff spot. Chas McCormick has been showing that he's got a decent amount of power, and he's hitting about 280 all year long. He's now the center fielder. Corey Dickerson, as we said, looks to be their preference. He's a guy that can hit some home runs and bat 320 or so. On the upside level, mind you, is getting the playing time. Rob Refsnyder, since his return, is hitting 429 with 556 OBP, 571. 571 slug. Admittedly, it's only a couple games, but even before that, he was hitting for more power and stuff. Somebody to watch out. Sam Hilliard's had 2 great weeks, 300 average with 4 home runs. Connor Joe, as I'm going to tell you, this is the thing, that Connor Joe is a better first baseman than CJ Cron. I'm going to say that over and over again. Whenever I say that, Cron hears that and has one good game to keep his numbers up in the same range. But in the last week, Connor Joe hit 371 with a 600 slugging. The two guys that I like the most here, strangely enough, Rafael Ortega has gotten beyond the 50 range. Oliver Heroes hit 304 since return with 2 home runs, though he hasn't stolen the base, which we hope is part of his game. Two guys I like the most here are Almeida Diaz of Houston, who's the guy that is taking over for Toro, who's taking over for Alex Bregman. Over the last month, he's hit 295 with a 568 slug. I didn't write down his home run. He's also eligible at third base and second base, besides being in the outfield, and that's kind of nice to help you flex your way through some things. And Yadiel Hernandez, we talked about, 10 weeks ago, about being the guy that I wish watch him give a shot to, because every time he comes up, he just hits. Over the last 2 weeks, he's hit 417 with 2 home runs. I know he's a 33-year-old rookie. He tore the hell out of. I think he had the highest OPS of any player in the Washington spring training this year. Hit 30 some home runs, 29 home runs. Last time there was a full-time year in minor leagues. Was tearing it up here. He's a guy that I definitely want to have on my team. Now that Schwarber's gone, he's going to be the left fielder, and that with Soto out, everything you see with Yadiel has been doing is going to continue. He's a good guy. I mean, he's not going to hit 417, but he has capacity to hit 300. He has capacity to hit 30 home runs, and he's one of those guys that people have overlooked. So those are recommendations on that one. I like Yadiel Hernandez. I like Almeida Diaz in the deeper leagues, with some looking at Hoy Park and Rob Refsnyder. In the shallow leagues, it's Ortega, Cain, and Belt. Which brings us to the shortstop at the 54-minute mark. A lot of the same guys come up here. It's one of the things, like in the shallow leagues, Brendan Rodgers is both at shortstop and second base. Ahmed Rosario, I believe, is at both shortstop and second base. Carter Kieboom is a guy that is he's been hitting well since he's come back this one time around. And the thing with rookies is rookies are rookies. but a rookie always struggles until he figures it out. And right now, it looks like he may be figuring it out. I would say the odds of him actually figuring out is probably 1-3, maybe 4-10, but there is a chance of it. So he's definitely something to watch in a shortstop, especially in the deeper style leagues. I consider the baseline is you always want to pick a shortstop who's at least as good as Jose Iglesias, and the Rosario and Rogers are. Keybone might be. In the shallow leagues at second base, you have Abraham Toro, who's just doing very well, got second base eligibility in Toronto. That's where he's going to play. Brendan Rodgers, and let's not forget Cesar Hernandez batting second for the White Sox in a potent lineup. And then Josh Harrison comes into the play. My only notes on second base were Abraham Toro did become second base eligible with 10 games at second, and Rugi Odor is covering for Gio Urshela at third base, so his playing time is assured. I've recommended Rugi Odor a little bit all year long in deeper leagues. He's a know what you got kind of guy, hits some home runs, but his average this year has actually been better than what I would have expected because he's hitting around 240. Shortstop notes: Fernando Tatis was taking flies in center field. People are talking about him possibly playing center field, but he's actually running out there catching balls. It'll likely be his move on return, which allows them to keep Cronenworth and Frazier in the game at second base and short. I think that Frazier. I thought that Frazier would move the outfield because he's played more of it this year. But the truth is, Tatis. If you were to say one thing I didn't like about Tatis' game is that he was a subpar fielding shortstop. He had great range, but did the other things poorly. Great range, strong arm, not necessarily an accurate arm. If they can get him to move to center field without it being insulting, it's going to be a big thing for him long term. And I think that if you consider where his injury is in his arm, most center field throws are not taxing throws for the center field. Most of them aren't. So it might actually make his injury less critical. And so that's a Jake Cronenworth was sick at shortstop based on that. And I told you that before that Grady Garrett's out with pseudo gout. So that was it. So my shortstop is getting a little bit thinner. I'm going to kind of cheat to get somebody in the shallow leagues. I talked about. I talked about Brendan Rodgers in the deeper leagues. Andres Jimenez just got called up, and I think he's going to play second base. He's 50 in deeper league in NFBC. He's already 51% owned, even though he's been in the minors playing poorly for over a month. But he's a guy you should look at. It's too long in the tooth now, but Jack Mayfield of the Angels gets to play with Rendon gone. I have no reason to believe that he's going to be a good player, but he's got the playing time, and realistically speaking, there's not much choice at shortstop anymore there. Ramon Urias is not a bad choice in Baltimore. Harold Castro for average. If you're just looking for playing time, they get the same Nick Ahmed or Alcides Escobar, but I would go with Jimenez, Mayfield, and Urias for those things. And even though I'm recommending Henry Jimenez, I'm telling you, that's a crapshoot there. It could pay off very well. It could be total lousiness. At second base, you have Almeida Diaz. We talked about at length. He's my number one pick there. Ramon Urias reappears here. Tommy LaStella got called up for San Francisco. I believe in his bat. I can't really predict his playing time because that team's got too many guys that are hitting. Even Evan Longoria is coming back very shortly. And then you have Andy Ibanez, who we recommended a couple weeks ago, who's been hitting just under 300 with a little bit of power in a deep league. That guy's a find. Shallow league, he's not even a thought. The guys there. Which brings us to first base and third base, and then we still have catcher to go, which will be done in 75 minutes. We still got 3 people watching us on the Facebook side, and a couple on the other side, and 3 on Yacht. Enough to keep going. I think I'll take a sip of my drink. Like I said, I've been a little bit sick. Not much in the way of notes here. First base in Chicago, Frank Schwindel is the first baseman. He's a 3-2 outcome guy with more power and more strikeouts than walks. The one guy I kind of like is Kyle Moran, who's going to be returning to Pittsburgh probably today as their first baseman. Before the season, I said that he could be the most unlikely 30 home run guy. Not unlikely in that it's unlikely that he can do it. but most likely no one's thinking about. I thought this was going to bode the end for John Nogowski, but Nogowski is probably going to get moved to the outfield. They've already sent down Philip Evans. He's the odd man out with Moran's return. At third base, Milwaukee's acquisition, Eduardo Escobar is batting fourth. Leaving Arizona has allowed Azur Cabrera to slap their lineup batting third. Sorry, in New York, the weird one is we talked about Brandon Drury's hot start and how much we like J.D. Davis. For some reason, the last few games they've been playing Villar at third over either of those two. I actually picked up Brandon Drury in a very deep league, and I got one game out of him. I don't think it was a game. I think it was one at bat. It was like one sacrifice slot. Washington Carter's Keyboom, since his call up, he's 12 for 46, which is a 308 average with 2 home runs. That's showing something that wasn't there before. The one thing that I actually don't have the answer for, because I don't know how it's going to play out, they might do something even more silly, is in Cincinnati, Jonathan India has been hitting really good at the top of the lineup, top of the order. He's got like the third best on-base percentage. Eugenio Suarez, who's hitting under 200 but with a lot of home runs, is signed a long-term contract at third base. So the question is, where does Mike Moustakas play? Even the idea of him moving over to first out of question with Joey Votto. I don't know who's going to lose time of those three. My guess is it's going to be Mike Moustakas. But it's a guess. And I'm going to tell you when I guess. I think the guy I want the most of those three is India. I think he's the one that they can't afford to not play. He's the straw that serves the drink in their lineup when they win games, top that order. So in the shallow leagues at first base, there's some decent names there. Brandon Belt reoccurs at 19%, Andrew Vaughn at 37%, Rowdy Tellez at 16%. Rowdy Tellez has done everything in the world to show that he deserves that spot in Milwaukee, and they need their hitting. Maybe to say that if you're in a pinch, you can pick up Jock Peterson. Heimer Candelario is still hitting over 300 over the last month, playing first base and third base. He'll be a recommendation on both sides, and Almeida Diaz is also qualified by Yahoo at first base. Most of those guys we talked about before. At third base in shallow leagues, Abraham Toro, Josh Harrison, Carter Kieboom, Heimer Candelario, all guys we talked about before. But I think the one guy that we didn't talk about, 50% roster, is Brian Anderson of the Miami Marlins. This guy's a pretty good hitter. You know, he's going to get you enough home runs, a few stolen bases here, and average doesn't kill you. He's kind of in a 12-team league, kind of like the 12th best third baseman around that point. But at 50% rostered, he's a guy that if you need a third baseman, you should definitely jump on. Since returning, he's been pretty decent. In the deeper leagues, we're going to talk about Miguel Cabrera without recommending, just because he's 2 home runs from 500, and he's one of the patron saints of fantasy baseball. Whenever we have a chance to say, hey, we love Mickey Cabrera, we're going to say, hey, we love Mickey Cabrera. Over the last 2 weeks, he's at 283 with 4 home runs, which is pretty darn nice considering what we've seen him over. I still like Connor Joe better than CJ Cron. I'll repeat that over and over again. Asdrubal Cabrera in deeper leagues also has first base and third base eligibility. And then you have Frank Schwindel of the Cubs, who's playing the spot at first base. Since coming to the Cubs, he's 7 for 21, which is 333 batting average with 1 home run. I don't think that batting average is going to stick. The nice thing about him compared to some of the other guys is he only struck out 3 times, which is pretty impressive compared to like Ryan O'Hearn, who's 10% owned, has roughly similar numbers, a little lower average, but he's got 10 strikeouts in the same number of bats. John Nogowski, I don't think is crushed because of this move, and Colin Moran is owned in 48% of leagues. My recommendations here are going to be Colin Moran and Asdrubal Cabrera. I got to go 3 by the rules of the game, so number 3 is going to be John Nogowski, though I'm not crazy about that one. At third base, we have Almeida Diaz, who we talked about, Jack Mayfield, which we've finally given up not liking, Carter Kieboom, who, like I said, he's at 285 with 5 home runs. Andy Ibanez reappears here from second base, along with Asdrubal Cabrera at 27 and Brandon Drury at 2%. Everybody there has already been talked about. Almeida Diaz is the guy I want the most. I'll take the flyer on Carter Kieboom. I believe with Jack Mayfield, the best is behind him, so I'm going to take Andy Ibanez as my third guy, as I've been talking about Ibanez as being pretty decent all year long. Yeah, that's all news there. At catcher, wow, I didn't recommend anybody at catcher on the shallow side. In the deep leagues, I had Williams Estadio, Travis Arnaud, Reese McGuire, Zelby Zavala, and Cal Raleigh. Though Travis Arnaud is almost back, can't see Sal Perez is there. I promised that I would never spend too much time on catchers. There were a few guys I know that Mike Stassi was available. I know that Alexander Kirk's available in Yahoo. There's a decent number of players there. Sal Perez was out sick on Friday, but he's back on Monday. And that is it. So with that, we get to the end of the show right at about the 65-minute mark, which is fine. The guys I want you to remember me talking about today, I want you to remember me talking about Brandon Belt, Wasker Noah, Yadiel Hernandez, Rafael Ortega, Daniel Lynch, Logan Webb, Andrew Vaughn, Eliezer Hernandez. I want you to know that the first place you heard about Hoy Park or Trevor May taking over in New York is here. Those are the 10. Last week, we used to talk about all the guys that I really, really like. There's a lot of guys I like, and I say it throughout the thing, and there's 3 levels of liking. I love the guy. I'm going to start him everywhere. I love him well enough. He's a decent replacement guy. Nobody who's bad is going to be named through this thing unless he's been so good that everyone's talking about him, and I need to come out and say he's bad. That's where we get to. You got to remember that Lenny is on at 9 o'clock on Monday, every Monday through Friday. That is the flagship show of this network, and it's great because usually 20 to 50 people in the chat room talking baseball. I'm there 2 or 3 days a week. George Hubson's on tonight at 6:30 p.m. Him and the Imbecile Show. I wish I could describe that in words. It's a love song to baseball. It's a very interesting show in its own thing. I heard somebody say that you could entertain 4 sports fans just by bringing up the name of somebody in baseball, and that's what this is. This guy brings up names of people that you're like, yeah, I remember that. That was good. It's a walk down memory lane. It's a love song. Andrea's on Sunday morning at 9 with Lenny. It's this morning, and they're on for almost 2 hours today. She has her own show on Saturday, normally at about 1:30. Take that with a grain of salt. She always shows up 15 minutes late, fashionably. The roundtable is again Monday night at 8 p.m. The National League and American League leaders in position. The National League batting average leader is Nick Castellanos with 324 batting averages. The American League batting average leader is Michael Brantley. He's actually leading the major 329. The National League and league leader in wins is a tie between Kyle Hendricks and Julio Urias at 13. And in the American League, Chris Bassett, Hyun-Jin Ryu, and relief pitcher Brent Suter, who we recommended to get wins a while back, are leading the American League in wins with 11. Don't let anyone tell you that. I need to stop for a second. Some people will say that a relief pitcher getting wins is a bad thing, but the truth is, the guy that comes in to pitch in a game that's tied 3-3 or 4-4 is a guy that has done so much for his team that the manager says, this is the guy I need in this most crucial of situations. It doesn't take anything to pitch in a game where you're up 3-0. It doesn't take anything to start a game. They'll start almost anybody. But to be the guy that says, hey, there's 3 innings to go in this game, and we're starting from scratch tied, means something. Brent Suter is one of those guys. Jonathan Loaiza is one of those guys. The wins, the fact that Brent Suter has 11 wins is undervalued what he does for that team. So, and how can you in fantasy baseball say, I'm going to count starters and saves, realizing that the starters go 5.5 innings at best on average, and closers go 1 innings. So you're looking at 40% of the game. You're just going to say, we don't care what happens. It's just nuts. That's my little rant. But anyway, I bring up these stats because wins and batting average means something. You should know who the batting average leader is. That's what baseball fans do. I thank you for showing up tonight. I thank you for listening on the download. I hope that there wasn't too much of there. I apologize for last week. Last week was a great show until I got to going through all 149 trades, and I bored even myself, and you can probably hear it in the voice. But I wanted to get it all on record. These guys got traded by what teams, and that was just unpleasant. Important but unpleasant, like going to the dentist. And with that, I bid you guys all a fine afternoon.